time, I'd like to invite the moderator for the second session, Professor Kim, to open a session dedicated to urban planning.
Yeah, okay. I'm Seon Kim, the moderator of the urban planning and the design session. It's a really honor for me to moderate this session. And first of all, I'd like to introduce three experts from Hong Kong and Seoul and Beijing. I briefly introduce you their current projects and their topic of today. The first speaker is Stefan Lau from Hong Kong University, and he's interested in urban regeneration and green urban design, and also teaching their urban design. And the second presenter is Bian Lanchun from Tsinghua University. He's a famous urban designer in Beijing, and now working to create urban design guideline for Beijing city, and also teaching in Tsinghua University. And the third speaker is Daniel Lo, Korean University. Actually, he joined KU last year. And before joining us, he was working as an urban planner and designer in SOM and HOK. And now he's teaching urban design and planning in Korean University. So, Professor Stefan Lau, could you present your good works today? Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and professors and students. And I'd like to thank this opportunity to thank the organizer, the KU, for inviting me. I actually, as an architect, working in the architecture department, which has interest in urban areas. I hope I can share with you what we have as an interest in Hong Kong. Today there's a bit of a challenge. My assistant have actually been put in quite a lot of slides, or maybe too much slides. And when I look at it, just before I came out, I actually added more. So the challenge is I'm trying to show you three things, three lessons, or three ongoing fights that we have in Hong Kong as an urban designer, architect, what have you, or anybody who are interested in community design, environmental design, sustainability, all these topics that are familiar to us these days. I'm going to show you three cases that underlines what we have been doing in Hong Kong over the last couple of years. I probably would be trying to not finish all of them, but let's see. Okay, so. Everybody, I think, understand, appreciate what Hong Kong stands for. Very high density, ultra heights. People have been living all their generations since they were born in all these buildings. Today, we are living in 60 stories. At 60 stories, there's a couple of problems. You don't have much of a problem when you're living at 40s. But once you reach 60s. Once you reach the 60s, then you get to feel the natural swing of the buildings, And the wind up there is quite high, more than you imagine. So we have to have special device on the rooftops to stop the building from swaying, okay? And we also have special device to prevent you from opening out your window, full swing, We have to have a lot of hinges, okay? We have to have a lot of super high-speed elevators. We have to have a lot of devices to stop water coming in all the way, if you're living on the 50s, if you flush your toilet and then the water, boom, go down, So there's a lot of tiny things, unfortunately, that to our surprise will have an impact on us when we're living so tall, So this is one aspect of it, if being so tall, okay. How do I go to the next? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Can I get a full screen? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, 这个往下走。Okay. Sorry. Thank you. I think I'm going to skip all this. I think this is all the basic information about Hong Kong that you could find on the web. It's very highly populated. All these areas, something like 24% is urbanized. The rest is all leave it to nature. So as a result, there's a lot of problems. The problems that I described just now is a choice of living in density. So about 20. That's why it explains why 24% is all that is. Where we have buildings, the rest is all nature. All this nature, interestingly, a lot of them are dispersed in mountains. So it's a little bit difficult. When we first start out, when the British came to Hong Kong, they say, okay, well, this is a little bit difficult to build on top of it, on mountains, move the mountains away, a lot of work in terms of resources. So probably we build high. That was what happened in the beginning. This is the GDP showing Hong Kong. Today it is still going quite strong in terms of economy. Again, got more pictures of Hong Kong. It's one of the 10 top GDP per capita based on US dollars. First, I think we should. Yeah. We also have very good sort of employment rate. The red line represented employment rate. Okay, so here comes the challenge. I'm trying to take you through about as an urban designer, when we try to do something to our city to make it a little bit different, a little bit better. That's what the government have been doing in all these cases. I'm trying to bring out to you what the role of designers are in this particular case. We always assumed what people need, what society need, what community need, but these real cases tell us otherwise. One of this project I think everybody have heard of is called the West Kowloon project. This is a reclamation area that was formed because of the need to make a tunnel, a cross-harbor tunnel that comes out here. As a part of this construction, there was a piece of land opportunity here. And there was a couple of years ago, about 10, 12 years ago, the government came in and said, let us pump in a lot of money and change the identity of Hong Kong, so that it doesn't really become a financial city, but it become a culture city. So let's invite a lot of architects in the world and try to make it a real cultural city. So this is a lot of architects come in. This is one of the projects by Norman Foster's. Many other architects come in and put in their schemes. But in the middle of it, there was a lot of voices going against it from the locals. The reason was not that, not only that we're trying to spend the criticism that the government spent a lot of money on capital expenditure like that, but also it comes from the local artists, because of a lot of this being proposed were actually very international based, museums, galleries, concerts, ballets, So the local artists think otherwise. They were arguing that, well, maybe we don't need all this project. Why don't the government give us 1% of what you propose to spend on it? We can make a performance for you for 100 years, So that I think is a very good sort of surprise, in terms of the government. The government are thinking that using finance resources try to change the image of Hong Kong, But the citizens were thinking otherwise. They are thinking that if you really come in to boost the identity of the city, perhaps you should think about the people itself, the performance, not the hardware. So this was one of the very interesting shock for the government. That was like 15 years ago when they tried to promote this. And this project went on, and the government tried to argue or to convince, calling it consultation process. Set up a lot of consultants, having a lot of hearing sessions, trying to consult and convince the people, but they, in the end, couldn't. This project was on hold, put on hold a couple of times, and the government coming back now after a few years and say, oh, let's revisit this project, let's find another architect, let's find another designer. So they are still thinking that the architect or a consultant can change the mind of the people, but actually they misinterpret what the people want. The people actually want something, this is good, but for the artists, they were thinking more, the other way, the real purpose of having such a facilities like this. Okay. So these are all this money spent and paid to all these famous architects coming up with all these promises, all these perspectives. Again, there seems to be a favoritism. Force keep winning in all these projects, because there have been rounds and rounds of competitions. Okay, these again some of the forces promises. In fact, this kind of interest awareness, so-called, was also echoed by other kind of criticisms. People started to look at what the city actually meant for them. What do public space meant for them? This is an example whereby a shopping mall was trying to get the extra bonus by building taller and promising that they would provide a public space right in the middle, outside of the entrance. And the people came over there and to protest and say that, wow, this is actually our space, so we could be here, So they are trying to do a lot of performances, So instead of having this as a kind of space, the developers somehow have misinterpreted the ideas too in the beginning of the project. The estate management thought that, oh, this space was actually owned by us, so they actually tried to run this space commercially. They tried to get the rent by renting it out to a car show, on Sundays and what have you, until the people came in and say, wow, this is actually our space, so we have the right to be here. So all that movement, I think, is not unfamiliar, but it just recently happened about 10 years ago. People became interested in what actually public space meant and why and how we should take care of them. Similarly, another examples can be seen all over this period of time. In this particular project, a real estate developer came in and said, wow, this is a really very nice part of the island that they convinced the government to say, let's build over here a lot of deluxe apartments, but we will provide this garden, The garden is meant for the public, but they didn't advertise it, so nobody knows and nobody goes. Until a certain day, certain people came in and say, "Wow, this belongs, for the public." So things started to happen. The second example I want to show, perhaps we won't spend so much time on it, is a project whereby it comes in. Maybe because it has a shared vision, it has a shared goal, so it is relatively more successful and more well known. It's a project called the Central Escalator System. It became one of the world's longest system because it have to climb something like 300 meter in height, right down from downtown and through a couple of 10, 12 escalators climbing up the hill, connecting therefore the residents, people who have to travel to work in the daytime and come back to home in the nighttime. So this escalator system is quite a miracle at the time because you have to assume a lot of land. You have to build on top and among buildings, trying to make it work, And what's more, it also connects with an existing system, network system that connects about 90 buildings in the CBD. It's making it a real walkable city. So this has been a very good example, and I think there's a lot of publication about it. In the urban regeneration aspect, it also did a very good kind of incentive by changing the land use, revitalizing neighborhood, changing the aspect of day-night city relationships. And this has been quite a interestingly a project that have been going on. And today there has been also a couple of projects follow through this same concept of trying to make the city into a walkable city as more and more developers try to connect with each other, providing 24 hours access. Whoever is doing this, developer A or owner B or owner C, they would gain a bonus from the government. They'll give them some extra incentives so that perhaps they could add another 1 floor, 2 floor up there. But provided that they have to connect. So this has become a very good kind of connector because we not only that it provide a convenience but also separate transportation. The cars can still go very very smoothly while pedestrians do not have to use so much the sidewalk if they don't want, but they actually choose an alternative to go on the upper floor. So this has been quite a successful initiative. And this is another diagram to show the connections. Now, once you are connectable, then you are connected to many kinds of services and facilities. The escalator system or the network had not only became a pedestrian connector, but actually it became some kind of a social connector. What happened is in many of the Asian cities, we have a lot of almost 300,000 overseas workers who are working at homes, at domestic helpers, and they all have one day off, which is Sunday. Everybody's sort of going out from their residence and meet their friends. And this particular group of people have actually no space to go, except to occupy the streets. And here you find them occupying all these elevated streets and trying to create their own territories and own territories. But they still are leaving out, respecting the rule of the game. They still let it function as a pedestrian system. So this has been also very interesting kind of observation. You see not only the connector become a people mover, but actually it become kind of a social space, depending on a shared space, depending on the time and day and day of the week. So again, more pictures of it. The planners had actually been planning to promote not only one but 7 elevators, throughout the rest of the Hong Kong, following the same concept. The one that we have shown you is this one, which have been in place. But at the moment, the government is trying to promote the others, slowly one by one. The second one just came in recently, just last year. So I think it will take a bit of time in order to connect the mountains. So this is like a 20-minute walk going across the 800 meter, climbing about 135 meter, and they do. So next time you are in Hong Kong, this is downtown over here, and this is the top of it, where they're mostly living, and the blue represent all the office. So you're switching from one land use to the other as you go up or down, depending on the time of the hour. Yeah. So there's a lot more analysis of it. I will leave it to the booklet that everybody have these slides in case those of you are interested to look at this aspect of a particular urban regeneration, solving the circulation pattern. The last example I wanted to share is about how. So we've been looking at transforming the city into from a financial to the culture. But that really actually gets on because there is a misunderstanding of what that meant in the people's mind. The second project was trying to solve the city's circulation. That works pretty well. Over time. The third one is a more recent one that I want to share with you, which is really looking at the culture city, by looking at heritage, what we have got left so far. Not that really many, because the British did not actually take a deliberate step to protect all historic buildings. They actually, over 156 years of time, most of the important heritage buildings have been developed, i.e. they have been demolished and turned away. So today, heritage becomes very, very scarce, and you only find them left, tucked away in most of the residential areas. So to renovate them or to change them into something meaningful becomes quite another kind of challenge. And this is what happened recently over a period of time. Okay, so the first task happened in this particular old area. We call it Wan Chai. This area, Wan Chai, meaning was referring to this bay. The last word actually means small. And the first word actually means bay, so it's a small bay, okay, in the origin of it. So in this particular area, the government was trying to say, let's do something about heritage too. Let's protect our city, and looking at what this part of city where it begins. This is what. The city, this part of the Wan Chai, or the bay, started off. So very soon you realized that all that north of it, are all reclaimed. Okay? So because it started right there, this small community today has grown to that big portion. Okay? And you start to look at it also in terms of as one. Reclamation starts the scale of the city also change as the building gets bigger and bigger, right? So let's just to give you a bit of the context. Okay? But let's take a look at what it was, Wan Chai, So what are we preserving, So this time the government gets smarter, and they're learning from the example of the West Kowloon. They're learning from the escalator. This time they say, let's do some research and find out what we should do when we try to promote a historic city. Let's look at what it was in the beginning. This is what it was. A lot of the community house, in the old days, all belongs to the Europeans, and gradually they've been replaced by the Chinese. As it got denser and denser, the Europeans actually move further up and up. Okay, so you get to see a bit of the. So this is what it is today, right? This very interesting building mixed Western style and Chinese style. It belongs to the church. Okay? And this is how it looks on one of the postcards. And today it has been somehow redeveloped and somehow been tribute to the past. It was totally rebuilt. So the government say, "Wow, this is not really what we want. It's a kind of like a fake." So this is like in the early 90s. This project. Okay, this particular street also being transformed today. But the scale of it is still there. This is the open market street. and then today it's still there. Okay, so this kind of house, buildings they're built by the colonists. The building that would adapt to weather. As built by the Europeans. Very big balconies to shade the sun, hot sun, and the rain. Right. So a big protection. The arcades. People can still walk and shop. So. Today is still one of them left. So the government is saying that, well, okay, let's try to do it. Let's just start with this particular group of building. Okay, so I'm going to skip all this. No. I go straight into this particular project. Okay. And trying to preserve it. And now this is before the situation. And this is what it looks like. All these are living conditions. Okay, it's been transformed into a restaurant. Yep. And but it needs finance, so the government say, "Oh, let's work with a developer. The best choice is to let the developer put up the capital, so we get the good effect, So we preserve this particular heritage building, and yet developer can build his residential building, and this can be turned into a kind of a tourist thing. This is what the government thought that this is best at the time. This was like 5 years ago. And when it opened, it becomes like this, very high class, flashy. But the newspaper came back and said, no, this is not what we want again. This is no more Wan Chai, because they forgot about, they don't feel the sense of belonging anymore, because it has been changed into totally something completely different. And it has also, it has been sort of manipulated, according to the press, by the developers. So this is the people reacting to it. Another project, was at the time going on. This is actually right now. And again, this entire street was thought to be regenerated and then turning into something better and new. So it was a developer came in and say, "Oh, let's work with the government, and I will bring you back something what you missed." And this is the building, and I'm going to propose this particular street, which will be whereby you can still practice what you used to be. All the shoppers, all the small shops, they can still rent a place. And of course, this is kind of a bullshit. So the locals again came in and say, "Oh, this is again not what we want." So all this newspaper was all these social workers, all these people putting up. Demonstrations, reacting to it. You have to pay for my compensation. Some of them come in and say, no, this is what not we want. Okay, so the problem is about how do we balance. At that particular point, the government started to realize and say, this project perhaps is not really what the community want and deserve, and this particular like a former market. A market that had been again redeveloped and it turned into a shopping mall. Okay, but it's actually quite out of scale if you look at it like that. So it's actually so huge. So all these particular reactions from the society actually forces the government to rethink, and it then changes its mind and say, "Oh, let's perhaps do something different. This time we take the developer out. Again, this is a group of small houses, tenement house, apartment house, and used to be shops at the bottom. The owner lived on top, or he rented to somebody. And this turned into a kind of a cultural space. This is the front. This is the back, and then it was kept into a public space, and this was added on something, and then the entire thing we programmed into a cultural. In this particular case, is a comic center. Something whereby you could became like a museum type and a functional space for artists. Okay, so this was quite well received. The last project example I have. For you, it's similarly another project over here, a very, very old house, and thinking about how it could be preserved. This particular case, the government is thinking, oh, in this particular case, perhaps it's better to leave it as a living house, whereby the resident can still live there. Okay, so we do the building, we surface it, doing a proper survey, finding out who wants to stay, what deserves to be staying. All these people who are living there. There is a Chinese Kung Fu man, who also operates as a medical doctor, and he has a lot of a history that well connected with the local society, and he wants to stay. So let's keep him there. So and turn it in the rest into a kind of a social community center. So recreating, crafting it out, and making a kind of a public space over here. At nighttime, you could do a lot of gathering. This is where the Kung Fu guy is here, and then the rest of it in becoming a community center. So in conclusion, this has been a process for all government. I think it's not something old. I think all city in Asia or anybody in Asia, as we try to regenerate our city, these are the three challenges I just try to outline for you. Trying to change the image of the city, trying to inject something, trying to move people, or how try to keep the past. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lau, for a very insightful presentation on the urban developments of Hong Kong. The title of the fifth presentation for today is Better Architecture Education, Better Human Settlements, and will be given by Professor Bian Lao Chan from Tsinghua University, China. Please give a welcome to our next speaker, Professor Lau.
Good afternoon, old friends. I'm very glad to come here to give you a brief introduction about the background of the urban planning disciplinary development in China and in Tsinghua University. So the title of my presentation is Better Architecture Education, Better Human Settlements. Oh, in China, in the recent years, there are a lot of rapid development in urban and rural areas. The urbanization process in China over the past 30 years experienced the most rapid pace. Until 2013, China's urbanization level exceeded over 50%. So you can see in the coast of the area of China. In the south of China is Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and in the middle, in the east of China is Shanghai and Hangzhou, and the north of China is Tianjin, Beijing, and the other Hebei areas. In this area, a lot of cities. So you can see a lot of city grows very rapidly in this area. So another problem is the emergence of signs of human settlements in China. There are a lot of problems. The first is the environment pollution. So you can see in recent years the air pollution very heavily in north of China. And another is the cultural heritage conservation. A lot of the traditional cities or traditional countries was destroyed. So another problem is in the big cities, the traffic jam also are big problems. All these problems are often treated as an engineering issue rather than a comprehensive one regarding the city's spatial structure, land use, and population distribution. So, in recent years, the demand of the urban planning professional students is need a lot. In 1950s, the city planning programs were established in several of the Chinese universities, including Tsinghua University, Zhongji University, and Chongqing University. And currently, there are nearly 200 schools in China have urban planning undergraduate programs with around 40,000 students. The city planning programs of 30 universities have passed the assessment by China National Higher Education Urban Planning Disciplinary Assessment Committee. Based on the statements over the past 5 years, the employment situation of China's city planning programs graduates, the demands for the doctor, master, and undergraduate students have been higher for a long period of time. The average annual ratio of employment position to graduates reached around 5:1. Another situation is the disciplinary characteristics. Urban planning is a complex discipline, cover research on the coordinated development of urban and rural space, economy and the society, the ecological environment. In recent 10 years, the disciplinary scopes of city planning education has expanded unprecedentedly, transforming from traditional architecture engineering model to the combining the model of comprehensive social management and engineering technology. Based on the disciplinary background in China, the urban-rural planning discipline is divided into 4 different types. The first type is the engineering types. The another is the science type. The third is the forestry type. The fourth is the management type. The first type is the engineering type, including architecture and engineering, with respective growth of 65% and 15%, including Tsinghua University, Zhongji University, and Southeast University, and Chongqing University, Tianjin University. The main characteristic of these programs is the focus on the urban spatial design and engineering planning with active creative thinking. The second type is the science type, mainly on geography, around 15%, including Peking University, Nanking University, and Zhongshan University. This program emphasizes research on the city microeconomy with strong data analysis abilities, higher level of digital technology, and strong logic thinking. The third tab is the forestry tab, around about 5%, including Beijing Forestry University and Nanjing Forestry University. This tab is emphasize conservation plan of urban ecological environment and landscape planning and design. The first tab is the management tab, including the urban planning and the management development at the School of Public Administration and Policy at Renmin University of China. This tab is emphasized the analysis and the research of urban planning and the management problems from the angle of public place and the public administration. Now I can give you a brief introduction about the history of Tsinghua University's the architecture and the urban planning development. Tsinghua University was established in 1911. Yeah, here you can see the traditional buildings in Chinese traditional style and the Western style, because the students was brought to America. The founding of our Department of Architecture was founded by the Professor Liang Sicheng. Yeah, he graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. His architecture thinking was influenced by modern architecture and urban planning ideology. So the guiding ideology for our school is the Professor Liang Sicheng's side, with all residents deserve homes, and another is the physical environment theory. So in the first time, Professor Liang Sicheng gave the curriculum classification in these 5 fields. The first field is about the cultural and social subjects. The second is science and engineering. The third is the presentation technicals. The fourth is about the design studios. The fifth is about the comprehensive research. So at that time, in our school was assigned to 5 years for architecture. Another is about the education framework. At that time, Professor Liang Sicheng told in our school in the future, there will be various departments, include architecture, city planning, landscape architecture, industrial design, and architecture engineering. In the during the Cultural Revolution from the 1660s to 70s, 1960s to 50s, our school was stopped to receive the students. After 1978, after the reform and opening up place was launched, Tsinghua University started to enroll both undergraduate and graduate students in architecture program with 60 students every year and 21 students at that time. In 1981, the first class of doctoral students was enrolled at that time. based on the previous Department of Architecture, the School of Architecture was founded in 1988 with the two departments, the Department of Architecture, Department of City Planning. And since 2000, the Department of Architecture Technology was established. And in 2003, the Department of Landscape Architecture was established. So you can see now in our school, now we have 4 departments: architecture department, urban planning department, landscape architecture department, and architecture engineering department. And also have several of the institute of the research. And we also have 2 institute for urban planning practice and for architectural design practice. These 2 institutes combined with our first department. All the teachers can do some practice projects in these 2 institutes. Since 1992, Science of the Human Settlements was published. This book was wrote by the Professor Wu Liangyong. It is called For the Architecture Education to Pay More Attention to the Cultivate of Professional Leaders with the Comprehensive Vision of Human Settlements. The 3 disciplines of architecture, landscape, and city planning shall be united together to form the leading discipline in the overall system of the science of human settlements. Next, I will have introduced about the overview of the urban-rural planning education in Tsinghua University. In Tsinghua University, the urban-rural planning discipline focuses on the research of urban-rural social and economic development, the construction activities with urban-rural physical spatial planning and design as its core subjects, to guiding on the cultivation of professional technology talents and the management talents working on urban-rural planning and construction. Now we have the 3 education levels: doctor, master, and bachelor. Currently, Tsinghua School of Architecture is gradually transforming emphasis from undergraduate education to enhancing the graduate education. There are around 500 undergraduate students and over 500 graduate students in our school now. This means that we have changed education focus from undergraduate students to the graduates and achieved the goal of equal number of students in those 2 levels. We started to offer the urban planning undergrad programs in 2010. Its graduate program have more than 100 students currently in our school. The main research direction and the contents include these 6 fields. The first field is about the regional development and planning. The second is urban design. The third is the rural planning and design. The first is community development and housing construction planning. The fifth is the urban development history and heritage conservation planning. The sixth is the urban and rural planning management. And we also focus on the education reform of the urban planning disciplinary. There are three transformation. The first transformation is the subjects from microarchitecture design to the market planning and the design. The second transformation is the way of thinking from the perceptual design thinking to the rational planning thinking. The third transformation is the methodology from creative design to research design. There are three transformations in our urban planning disciplinary. And we also focus these four aspects. The first is the focus on the emphasize key research topics. For the students, they can have more time to have a research works and to do some of a case study. The second is the training of cooperation ability. So from the undergraduate students for the urban planning, they have to do some works, 2 or 3 students. The third is about expanding design visions. The first is the enhancing technical support, such as Excel, SPSS, and GIS, and such kind of tools was used since the graduate students. There are some of the key features of our urban-rural planning education. The first is the core missions of the development of urban-rural planning displayed at Tsinghua University are in first aspects. The first is the talent cultivation. The second is the scientific research. The third is the social service. The fourth is the cultural innovation. This book was written by the Professor Liang Sicheng. It's about the pictorial history of Chinese traditional architecture. At that time, when they established our department in 1950s, he designed the Chinese national national emblem and the monument of the people's hero in the Tiananmen Square. And Professor Wu Liangyun also wrote a lot of books. The very famous book is about the future of architecture in the 1999 in UI in China, was held in Beijing, the Beijing Charter. This is another project that was designed by Professor Wu Liangyun just in the inner city of Beijing. It's about the traditional style courtyard houses. We also train the students. The training of the education goals include establish positive value orientation, learning solid fundamental professional knowledge, and learning the comprehensive professional skills. Here is a works designed by our students in first year in our urban design studio about railway station for the subway. Here's another project also was designed by students. It's an urban design studio. Here is about the traditional areas conservation and renovation. They chose the site just in the inner city of Beijing about this area, how to preserve the traditional houses and hutung, and how to renovate some of the destroyed areas. They make a lot of the survey about this area. We also have a lot of the scientific research provide the theoretical base on the methodology foundation for the practice of urban-rural planning and improves education outcomes effectively. Here is two research works. This one is about the Beijing area, Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei regional special development strategy. Here is about the rehabilitation of the Beijing old city. This is part of the published books about the research of Beijing and the urban planning problems about the Chinese works. Also have some of the practice-oriented this plan also is the character of our school. The integration of teacher, research, and practice is not only the characteristics of Tsinghua's urban-rural planning programs, but also the key content of social service. Here is another real project in Beijing, in Shichahai area. About 30 years, a lot of our professors and students joined these research works and to change a lot. They design a lot of works in that area. We can see some of the pictures in 1990s. It's now here some of the projects, small projects was finished in this area, and all this area was changed a lot. Another characteristic is the enhanced international exchange, and collaboration has gradually become the key method to improve the development of the level of Tsinghua's urban planning programs. It's a critical factor to cultivate professional leaders with a global vision. Here is some of the joint studio with the world famous universities students. They do some works, and we also invited famous professors from the Harvard and the MIT and some of the other famous universities. They come to our school, give our students critical for their works, and also give some famous research lectures for the students. So this first word is from a Chinese traditional meaning. It's about the planner, how to plan the cities in traditional meaning. But now we also think it's about the wish for the old students in the future. We not only planning the cities, but also we have to planning, do a lot of works for the country, for the nation. So the challenges and the opportunities coexist in China's urbanization process, which has become the key components of our national development strategy. Sustainable urbanization process has not only gained broad consensus with the Chinese society, but is also greatly expected by the international community. So I think in the future, our schools, the urban planning, these plenary and all the programs will cultivate much more the students serve the country and do much more research works in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll promise I'll finish on time. That means I'm going to keep it short. Last July, I participated at the American Collegiate School of Architecture to give a presentation of my experience in Korea in citizen participation area, particularly my experience with giving charrettes. Charrette is a sort of a urban design process that was developed in the States to engage the citizens in the design. And I sort of, my conclusion of that presentation was that there is this need for reevaluate these processes to customize for different culture and different context. Because there were design charrettes in Korea per se. It wasn't quite working because of cultural differences or the type of issues that they deal with. And what I noticed is that the participants or with the audience were very much interested in the fact that what they've developed in the Western field or academia or a professional field isn't quite working in Eastern hemisphere. And I began to think that what we're teaching, our curriculum and what we're talking about in schools and universities may have to be rethought, whether our importing the Western ideas without really localizing what they're trying to do. So I was very much interested in this idea of having this discussion amongst Asian countries and Asian institutions, academic institutions, to really talk about what is education and what is it for, who is it for. And I'm personally hoping that this type of conversation continues on beyond this conference to open up. And also, I think that sort of competition or conference was a very loose and very interesting because it was sort of a personal view as an educator of what education is and how they have approached sort of pedagogy or the didactic discourse in architecture. But here, I think, because this is a 50th year anniversary event, I was obliged to talk about the program in Korea University. So, nevertheless, it will be very dry and very serious. And unfortunately, I don't have interesting images, so the students could take a nap if you want. With that note, I'm going to begin my presentation. So what I So what I did was because I started teaching 2 years ago, I'm not fully aware of the whole the program. So it was good learning process for me to go back and where it started and who sort of started and how they the program has evolved over time. The Department of Architecture is 50 years in the making. The Urban Design and Planning program is only 30 years in the making. So what I did was I sort of overlaid different issues in urban design and urban planning. As you know, in urban planning and design, there's a whole list of issues that has to be considered, and there's a lot of influences back and forth that has to respond to different set of changes, transformation, evolve over time. So what I did was overlay the program of Korea University Urban Planning and Design program with the national, you can't really see this, but the national accreditation program as an academia standardization process. And second layer was a national economic context. Inevitably, they have this sort of influence over what we do and what sort of experts or specialists we produce from the program. And third is the public projects and public research projects that has been initiated by the public government. So what I sort of got out of this evaluation or analysis was that there is a very clear response from the program to these other three layers. And I wanted to sort of talk about different programs, but I think the program education system has to be responsive. Right? So responsive to the different changes in context, economy, and also academia as a whole area of experts. So I sort of categorize it by academic cooperative ness to the academic system, and the program has to be adaptable to the market conditions, and also it has to be responsive, meaning leading public policy. Right? As an academic institution, you're supposed to advance what we do and what the general public do. So the first layer of Korea University program, as you can see, started in the 1982. There was a Professor Yang who joined the Department of Architecture, which set up different courses within the Department of Architecture and within the curriculum of architecture. And in parallel, he sort of started the graduate program as well and research lab. And you could see what I did was I asked graduate students to help me compiling the keywords of the research and set of research projects that have been undergone through 3 years. So the red ones has more frequency, which means the research that have been done more than once or twice. So it sort of highlights the main sort of objectives or main topics of that year within urban design and urban planning. This is relevant because this is sort of the end product of what the didactic process have produced in a way. So I wanted to sort of overlay what students produced against what national economy and construction industry have gone through. So for those of you who are not familiar with the development of Korean economy, it's very hard to read, but in 1980s there was a Olympics '88, which really transformed the economy from agriculture-based to industrial-based economy. So you could see the construction, the percentage of construction sector within, as per the GDP of Korea, sort of has a very big jump, exponential growth before and after Olympics. And there's an IMF, which has an economic crisis in Korea, as well as there's a chain sort of reactions that happen in Asia. But there was a dip. But again, it took off. It sort of made up even bigger jump. And we're coming sort of to 2012, where there's a Lehman Brothers crisis, but even before, 2 years before 2010, there was a sort of slowdown in the economy. And you could see the general trend sort of peaked. You could say the construction industry has peaked in maybe 2009 or 2008, and sort of gradually going down. But this includes the overseas, more of an added value construction. So domestic is further; it'll be lower than this, right? So you could say that the economy itself has sort of in decline. We're sort of entering the declining age, and this is sort of fueled by the context, the social and political context is sort of reinforced that changes. You could see there is a urban design article added to the national law in the 1980s about urban design and how we should regulate how people build their houses and how they build districts, houses, new towns, so forth. And you could see in the 1990s, there's a first generation of new towns being built in the periphery of the city, metropolitan areas, and then the second generation in 2010. So this big boom in housing has really fueled the construction industry to grow, and as well as the economy of Korea. And you could see in parallel, there's a political, the government's initiative to maneuver these changes for the better, for more sustainable, more articulate ways of developing it. And as sort of we're approaching 2010, you see there are a lot more historic preservation, it's more about community development. We talk about a lot more about social problems rather than building, rather than physical-based development. There's a lot about issues about non-physical elements in urban design. And as we approach 2013, last year, or this end of last year, December, there's a big shift from the national development strategy being sort of produce, make, build to sort of slow down in physical building, but sort of increase the efficiency in the quality of life. So rather than quantity, they start to focus on the quality of lives. So this is a overlay of those three components. This is a curriculum and the research keywords, which will be the outcome of the curriculum. And this is sort of the economy, and you can see that there's a dip, the IMF, Olympics, and these are sort of, I try to look for correlation between the education system and what we've produced over the context of the larger national planning. And sort of it was clear to me that, for example, there's, I told you about the initiative or the Article 8 that was added to the national law about regarding urban design. That's when the school hired a professor to teach urban design. I'm sure there's a correlation to that, but even sort of throughout this sort of research, the body of research, you could see that there is a sort of a more longer-term research agenda that was put in versus a very short sort of spikes of these keywords that pop up in relation to the initiative that was set up by the government. And I thought that was very interesting in how it sort of demonstrated how the program has produced in response to the public governance and the initiatives that was set up by the government. So I would say the Korea University's program, the Urban Planning and Design program, has produced specialists and experts as per the demands of the market. A market meaning industrial market, industry, and the government market. So we've produced a good amount of PhD students, a good amount of professors, as well as people in the public sector and private sector and public organizations. So we want to on the strengthen the point where the break point. So up to 2012, I think as a program we were very adamant about producing these intellectuals or experts in urban design and planning to coping with the development of the industry, the construction industry. But since the industry has gone down and then there is a political movement to really think about the non-physical aspects of urban development, we've set up a new a program within urban design and planning. And we got the national funding last year. We set up a new program to talk about the new ways of really doing urban regeneration. So there's I think the play of naming or definition has been changed from urban development to now they're talking about urban regeneration. The sense of the word doesn't really translate into Korean, but in Korean it talks about the non-physical aspect of the planning. Right? So urban regeneration in some different countries have their very different connotation related to urban regeneration, but in Korea, urban regeneration is sort of defined as a it contains non-physical elements of urban design and planning. So this is a new program that we're working on. We have about 7 students who signed up over 1 year period. And we are calling it Urban Regeneration Towards Sustainable Community. And we got the funding for the education component. So we're developing a new program, essentially. There's a education part and there's a research part. We thought there is a need for setting up a really multidisciplinary education system because all the expertise and knowledge are scattered in different departments. And we're not just talking about within the construction, building sector, but sort of opening up a whole wide of possibilities of working with other disciplines, humanity, social science, science, engineering, and so forth. So we sort of, as you may imagine, it's a struggle. We have a department of geology, department of international studies involved, and we are trying to get department of law and other different fields to be involved. And we think there is a tremendous amount of interest in the way that I think the other fields are feeling the need to get involved in urban regeneration more than I think architects do. We have students from Department of who majored in humanities. She studied oral history, and she thought there was a very sort of link, a very close link between how she sort of interview people would have an impact on how we do urban regeneration, how we regenerate cities. So we're welcoming students outside architecture more than students within architecture and urban design. But as you may imagine, it's very, very difficult. Anyways, the curriculum is set up to expedite the dialogue between disciplines and cross boundaries and disciplines, so forth. And we have a very sort of open discussions and open sort of very different ways of experiment how different fields can work together to achieve the same goal. We also have set up, we're working to set up a one-stop center for urban regeneration, so we can engage the public sector, local governments and things into this wider discussion. So in conclusion, you can see that within the academic system, Professor Eunice Kim has explained the process we had to go through as a Department of Architecture to upgrade, to add in the systematic component of curriculum to comply with the overall sort of academic system, and through that we've achieved to bolster the faculty members and therefore the contents of the program. And we also sort of adapted to the market conditions. When there was a need for these experts and specialists, we have delivered very high quality graduates. But since these demands are decreasing, we're sort of setting up new programs to look for another way or different ways of doing it. And also to the public policy, we have a research lab that's one of the largest in the Department of Engineering and Architecture that really has a one-to-one relationship with different government, public sector to the research and project. And also we've set up wide extensive MOUs and relationships with local governments and international organizations. So through that, I think the program has been responsive, and I think the education system has to be flexible and adaptable to changing context or changing trends. That note, I would end there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Professor Oh, for a very illustrative presentation on the urban design program at Korea University.